Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm very pleased to be with you this morning. And I'd just like to say a few personal words at the beginning, if that's okay. Lynn, were you going to translate this part, or you're just... Okay. So in case you're wondering about my name, my grandparents were immigrants from the Netherlands in Holland. And in fact, my wife, Lynn, who is with me today also, she is from Dutch background as well. I'm very grateful for God's leading in my life. After growing up here in Walnut Creek many years ago, I went to college, and then I went to seminary, and I was ordained as a minister in the Christian Reformed Church, Christian Reformed denomination in 1982. I spent 6 years as a missionary in Central America, and then 11 years as a pastor in Miami, Florida, and then 7 years as a pastor in Vancouver, British Columbia. I especially enjoyed getting to know many Taiwanese in Vancouver, including my church secretary. I've been back here in the Bay Area for about 8 years now, first as a church pastor for 3 years, and then after volunteering in the Monument community and serving as a board member of my organization, I felt God calling me to make it my full-time ministry, and my church confirmed that call. I love working with my staff to make a difference in people's lives in very specific, tangible ways. In 2012, we merged, joined together with another community nonprofit organization, and now we offer a variety of services, comprehensive services and training to the community. We focus on jobs and job training. We have 5 programs in all, one of which is our day labor program, focusing on jobs, job training, helping residents become meaningfully engaged in improving their community, and providing support for people to live healthier lifestyles. I'd also like to say, before I launch into the sermon, how much I appreciate your support as a church. Lunches that for many years you have provided to the day laborers at our center have made a big difference, because often they don't eat lunch unless they are provided. The Brown Bag Lunch Program also shows people God's love. And lunches coming from a church remind them throughout the day that God is with them. So on their behalf, I want to say thank you to the community outreach team and to all of you for your support. This morning in the message, I want to focus especially on verse 1, Romans 12, verse 1, where we read, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship." Just about every day, I'm reminded that God did not make us to be alone. I see this in talking to people in my community whose families live far away. I think of this when I see in the news the anguish on the faces of family members of missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. I'm even reminded of this when I watch movies like Gravity, starring Sandra Bullock. And I detect that one theme of the movie is whether or not Sandra Bullock's character, who shut herself off from close relationships when her daughter died a few years before, whether or not she will re-engage with other people, whether or not she'll come back into relationships with other people. That's right. God made us to live with others, in families and in communities. And in fact, I believe that we cannot be happy or fulfilled unless we are in community. In the book of Romans, chapters 9 through 11, the Apostle Paul is talking about the church. He explains the relationship between the community of God in the Old Testament, Israel, and the community of God in the New Testament, the church. And he uses the illustration of there being one olive tree with one root, with some branches being broken off, Israel, symbolizing Israel, and other branches being grafted on, symbolizing the church. He then talks about how all this fits into God's plan, and the working out of God's mercy, and the showering of God's grace upon this community. And then, suddenly, at the end of chapter 11, he just throws up his hands, and he says, I can't understand this anymore. He says, oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out. This gets at the theme of the Bible. God, there's a lot we cannot understand, but we can understand this. God gives his love and his salvation to a people. And he forms a community, a worldwide community and local communities. The Apostle Peter in 1 Peter chapter 2 puts it this way, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Let me ask you a question. What is a community? What is the church community? A lot of churches use the word fellowship to describe this. And they say, we have a great fellowship. Or we really enjoy our fellowship. Well-known pastor and author Calvin Miller once wrote that he cringes, that he objects whenever he hears statements like that. He says, biblically, fellowship is not a party. In fact, the biblical word for community and fellowship used in places like Luke chapter 5 describes the fishermen disciples of Jesus as business partners. That's what that word gets at. In other words, God forms a community to be a functioning, serving community to reach out to the world. One thing I've learned in all my years is that only in purposefully working and serving together do we then experience celebration, true fun and celebration. What about that? Think about when you really serve others together. When you really make a difference in people's lives together. Isn't that just the greatest thing? That can be so rewarding. That can be so unifying. Now, when I talk about being a working, serving community, many of us might be tempted to respond like this little boy who was told by his mother how we are all to be about doing the Lord's work. We're all to do the Lord's work, she said. Well, in all likelihood, thinking that his mother had just told him to do his sister's work, thinking that that's what kind of thing she was saying, he said, but Mom, can't God do his own work? Why do I have to do it? The answer to that is found in a comment by poet Victor Davey while he was being cared for in a Catholic hospital as he was dying. One of his last acts on this earth was to thank the nurses for all their kindnesses to him. Don't thank us, the nurses said. Thank the grace of God. Very perceptively, he then asked, but aren't you the grace of God? They were how he experienced the grace of God. We are God's grace. And that's where it all begins. 1 Peter says, we are a people of God who have received God's mercy. Romans 12 begins this way, in view of God's mercy. It all begins with God's mercy. His love, His grace, His compassion, His forgiveness, His care, His presence with us in our lives. And how do we experience all of that? Through people. People who know Jesus. People who Jesus gives to us. And through knowing Jesus ourselves. Jesus, the one who took the form of a servant and who sacrificed himself. Just as we sang earlier, who sacrificed himself for us. How many of you can imagine this Jesus pleading with us? Picture the Son of God, the great high priest, the Lord of Lords, pleading, begging with us. Through the Apostle Paul today, he does just that. In Romans 12, verse 1. Therefore, I urge you, we read. The word there means I beseech you. I plead with you, brothers and sisters. Plural. That means everyone. That means this community in this place. Therefore, I plead with you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy. What? What comes next? Offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. Offer your bodies. What does that mean, our bodies? It's interesting that a lot of people spiritualize this. They say, well, it means to give God everything. You know, give God our hearts and our love and our prayers, all that stuff. And yet, while that's true, I think it's clear that the emphasis here is on our bodies. The emphasis here is that God wants us to present to Him, to offer to Him and to others, our actions. Physical, day after day, concrete, material, tangible deeds. Deeds, which, if you're like me, may risk hitting your thumb with a hammer while you're helping out somebody in need. Somebody who God has put on your heart to help out. Or burning ourselves on a stove or on a pan while cooking for someone in need. Or not to have time for ourselves when we're caring for someone else's children or grandchildren. It means making those kinds of living sacrifices every day on God's behalf. And praying for people. Praying for them, interceding for them. That's what it means to be a community of priests. And then next in this verse, we come to an oxymoron. You know what that is? An oxymoron is a phrase like jumbo shrimp, or bittersweet, or a working vacation. The phrase living sacrifices is like that. It's because it's in the Old Testament, a sacrifice was always killed. So how can we be living sacrifices? It's because in Christ, we are given new life. We're given the mercy and grace and strength of God in order to, in life, every day, live the way Jesus lived, loving others, caring for those in need, sacrificing our bodies and our time and our money and everything else. That's right. It's costly. But it's an expression of the new life that is ours. And it brings new life to us and to other people. It's not just about doing things for other people, but it's showing them the new life that is ours, and then receiving new life and energy and joy from them, from what we do. It's like there's a saying that says you cannot learn baseball by sitting in front of a TV set and watching it. You can't really know what it's like to play baseball, the work and the joy of it, by sitting in front of a TV, or even by going out occasionally and just throwing the ball around. In the same way, you can only know what the Christian life is like, the work and joy of the Christian life, by living it, by presenting your bodies as living sacrifices, day in and day out. And then this brings us to the last phrase in Romans 12, verse 1, where we're told that by offering ourselves as living sacrifices is our spiritual worship. In other words, worship isn't just something that we do one day a week here on Sundays. No, public worship here is just one part of our worship. God doesn't want unthinking worship. He doesn't want rituals. He doesn't want ritualistic sacrifices. He wants living sacrifices, whether we're here on Sundays, or at home, or at work, or in whatever we do. It's really interesting how this phrase, living sacrifices, at the end of verse 1 is translated in different Bibles. In different versions of the Bible, it gets translated different. Some English versions translate it spiritual worship, which we heard this morning, while others say reasonable service. But the original Greek language literally says, this is your logical worship. I like that. Think about it. To offer ourselves as living, day after day sacrifices is our logical worship. Yes, it's worship. Maybe we see God's love, God's grace, God's joy, and then we respond by praising Him, by showing thanks to Him in our lives. But it's also logical. I mean, isn't it logical that people who have received God's grace and mercy, who have been loved with the sacrifice of Christ, who have received the help of the Holy Spirit, who have been blessed by God in many ways, isn't it logical that they would respond by giving of themselves as living sacrifices? Isn't it reasonable that they would want to serve the Lord day in and day out, making sacrifices along the way? Isn't that just what you'd expect? Perhaps you've heard the story of a man who was out of work. His unemployment had run out, and so his unemployment benefits had run out, and so he was very desperate for a job. He even went to the zoo to ask for work. They told him that they didn't have a regular job, but that he could make a few dollars by taking the place of a gorilla who had died the day before. Well, since he really needed the money, he took the job, put on a gorilla suit, and then went out to the gorilla cage. And you know, it really wasn't all that bad. All he had to do was eat bananas and swing from a rope. And after a while, he began to like the job. But, alas, all good things do come to an end. One day his rope broke, and he fell over the fence into the lion's cage. He started yelling for help, and the closer the lion came to him, the louder he yelled. And then finally the lion came right next to him and said, "Buddy, will you quit yelling, or we'll both be out of a job?" Often, and I'll close with this, often we are like those men in a gorilla suit or a lion's suit. we choose a role in life for which we are not suited. We choose to be alone, which is not how God made us. Or we choose to live for ourselves. Or we choose to do what everybody else does, rather than to do the logical thing. Rather than to do what you would expect from people who have received God's mercy. Let us choose this week, from now on, in view of God's mercy, God's love, to dedicate ourselves to be living sacrifices, to offer our bodies, our lives, our deeds, day after day, to rededicate ourselves to this, to God, to offer ourselves to God and others.